What Happens to the Story by Hunt Stromberg. Picture Play, October 1920. There's a crackling splatter of light across the screen, and you see a giant tree struck by lightning, while the drums in the orchestra rumble, and peas are rattled in a can to simulate rain. Gosh, they can do anything in the movies now, murmurs a man behind you. Must have taken months to catch that. How do they do it? That same remark applies to a lot of other things you see on the screen. How do they catch a storm at sea, in which great liners are shown sweeping up to the crest of a wave and then hurled to watery depths? How do they go about making a picture anyway? Where do they begin? It's interesting to watch the progress of a scenario through the studio, just as engrossing as it is to step behind the scenes and see how nature is denaturized, so to speak, and the fury of a storm depicted right on the studio lot. By visiting the Thomas H. Ince studio recently, I learned something about this mysterious journey, and incidentally about some of the tricks that make picture making what it is. When a story is accepted for production, 12 copies of the continuity, the specially written version of the story in which it is divided into scenes, are made and distributed among the departments concerned in the making of the picture. The heads of these departments and their assistants must become familiar with it and its general requirements, and everybody, regardless of rank or office, is asked to submit ideas and suggestions to the director assigned to the picture. This is one reason why the very best place to learn to write for the screen is from a job inside the studio. The casting director then selects the players who are to surround the star. Sometimes 2 candidates, possibly 3 or 4, are chosen for every role. Each is tried out, and finally one is selected. Meanwhile, the director and his assistant, the technical and art directors, and the stage manager get together in the office of the production manager to arrange a definite schedule for the construction and placement of all sets for the picture. With this schedule completed, the art director makes and submits to the director rough sketches for these sets. The director must stretch his imagination and make sure that such sets are in strict accordance with the action and atmosphere of the story. Every detail must fit in perfectly with the general feeling of the story. For example, when a recent picture of Enid Bennett's The False Road was in preparation, it was necessary to get sun-baked lumber and, in the studio, build the little cabin around the foothills called for in the story. Wintry scenery and a realistic snowstorm also had to be created. Cotton batting, tinsel, bits of snow-white paper, and a special fluid whose formula the studios will not divulge produced the proper effect. Under the head of atmosphere, such details as furniture, decorations, and all the odds and ends of the set are included. For instance, if the heroine of the picture is blonde, it would be criminal to provide a light background. To gain a contrast and ensure crystal clear photography, the walls of the set must be dark. A staff of draftsmen handles those first plans of the art directors, and they are passed on by Mr. Ince, the director, and the continuity writer of the picture before they go to the stage manager and the carpenters. Usually the building of a set takes from 2 to 30 days. Sometimes such building takes place on the stage where the set is to be used, but in the case of elaborate sets, miniature models are first made, and the actual building takes place in the mammoth shops adjoining the studio proper. The sets are then moved piecemeal to the stage where they are to be set up, and it's no unusual sight to see husky stagehands stalking about the studio bearing a Greek column or a large portion of a winding stairway to the proper destination. Samson would have found no difficulty in getting a job around the studio, and Hercules could have had a life contract as a mover of scenery if they lived nowadays. Finally, the set is okayed by that court of last resort, which I have already mentioned. Then comes the familiar cry of ready, lights, camera, and actual production begins. Now for the promised revelations regarding ways of outwitting Mother Nature. Of course, it might be possible to have cameramen hang around the woods until a nice big tree was struck by lightning, but several cameramen might grow old and hoary waiting to catch such a scene. And it's much simpler to move a good big tree to the studio lot, wire it with electricity, and then let it be artificially struck in full view of the camera. As for the storm at sea, this too might have been accomplished by using real ships on a real ocean, the ships being insured against loss, and the storm just being waited for until it arrived. But to build perfect miniature models is much less expensive and far easier, and to make a storm in the studio tank is equally simple. Which all goes to show that while the makers of the movies will go the limit when necessary, they aren't averse to using commendable thrift and making clever substitutions whenever they can.